Hi, everyone. This is Sam Silverman, Managing Partner of EB5AN. Thank you for taking time to join us on today's webinar. Today, we're going to be speaking with 5 of the EB5AN team executives, and we're going to be discussing why did they join EB5AN, and also how does EB5AN compare to some of the prior companies that they've worked for, as well as a general overview on what they're seeing today in the EB5 market. All right. First, a little bit about EB5AN. We're a leading EB5 investment fund manager. We've been in this space for over 10 years. We've worked with thousands of investors from around the world. We own and operate many regional centers that cover all the continental United States. One of the things that makes EB5AN unique among other regional centers is a complete focus on 100% investment transparency. We're one of the only major regional centers that provides all the financial statements with respect to the project companies and any separate entities guaranteeing performance, including the repayment of EB5 funds for investors, so that investors can have access to the full financial picture before making a decision on their investment. We've also been very active on our blog and YouTube channel, publishing hundreds of articles and videos, helping investors identify key items and red flags for EB5 investment due diligence. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Sam Silverman, one of the 2 managing partners. A little bit about my background is there on the left-hand side, and my partner Mike Schoenfeld there on the right side. Our regional centers cover the entire continental United States and Puerto Rico, and this allows us to focus on identifying the most compelling EB5 investment projects around the country. We're not restricted geographically whatsoever, and we're always looking for the most compelling project from both an immigration and financial risk perspective, and we're not geographically restricted from doing so, unlike many of the other EB5 companies out there. One of the things that is really important is that people of many nationalities and backgrounds from around the world have consistently found value in our investment approach to EB5. We've worked with over 2,000 investors from more than 60 different countries around the world, and this is a map and a list of a select number of those countries. Many of our articles and projects have also been featured in many leading publications. Here's a select list of some of those publications. And now we'll shift over, and it's my pleasure to introduce 5 of our team members. We'll go left to right and cover a number of questions and then kind of have a discussion. So first, starting with Jake, can you share a little bit of background about yourself, introduce yourself, and share what you were doing before you joined EB5AN and why you decided to join EB5AN? And then we'll go left to right, starting with Jake.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Jake Hoyle. I'm one of the vice presidents here at EB5AN. Little bit of background on myself. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Went to Columbia University in New York, where I got a degree in economics and business management. I also studied a little bit of Mandarin Chinese while I was there. Graduated and spent a summer at Jefferies Middle Market Investment Bank on their fixed income sales and trading desk before moving to Credit Agricole, one of the largest commercial and investment banks in the world. And that was when I moved to EB5AN. So I know, some of us have joined more recently. I've been with the company for about 7 to 8 years now. And so I've seen this regional center really grow from a company that maybe had 150 to 200 million in assets under management now to a regional center with nearly $1 billion in assets under management. So one of the primary reasons why I joined EB5AN back in early 2017 was I really believed in what Mike and Sam were doing. Right? They were aiming to create a company that provided industry-leading transparency to EB5 investors and structured safe and secure financial investments for EB5 investors from all over the world. There were a lot of poorly structured and risky projects that were raising a lot of money at that time. And Mike and Sam really saw an opportunity to penetrate the market, create high quality institutional level deals, and grab market share. And over the last 5 to 6 years, I think we've really seen that play out. And big part of why I joined the company was to help grow that initiative. Prior to joining EB5AN, I actually represented the United States at the Olympic Games on the Team USA fencing team. I'd always grown up fencing. I competed for Columbia University, and then graduated and was on the USA national team for many years and ultimately competed at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ahmed Khan. I was born in the US in New York and moved down to Atlanta and kind of was brought up there. Went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and ultimately went to law school at the University of South Carolina. Didn't go to a low competition like the Olympics, but I was captain of my intramural softball team. So yeah, always had a thing for sports and including baseball. But yeah, after becoming an attorney, I actually began my EB5 career at Clasco Immigration Law Partners, which is one of the largest EB5 practices in the country. Learned under the tutelage of the great Ron Clasco himself, and filed hundreds of EB5 cases on the investor side, as well as learn about documentation on the project side. It was actually there that I met Sam and Mike, the managing partners of EB5AN. At that time, kind of in a professional capacity, we were one of the firms that they were using to, file for investors as well as do some project doc work. And so I knew them from those days. Throughout my career, I've worked at a couple of different immigration firms, notably Fragaman, Barry Appelman, and Layden, two of the biggest firms in the country that represent some of the biggest clients in both the corporate side as well as in the EB5 field. And I've also served as a top-level executive at now 2 regional centers, EB5AN being my second. Why I joined EB5AN, I was kind of looking at a foray back into the EB5 landscape after the pandemic and then the RIA in 2022. And I was approached by multiple different regional centers, but ultimately I chose EB5AN because I believed in the product that they were putting out there. I believe they were well placed. Mike and Sam had really taken the time and the initiative to find projects that not only put investors in a good place to get their immigration success, get their green card, but also to get their money back and basically achieve both the goals of the EB5 program. So I saw basically what they were selling. I knew them professionally for a long time, and I thought that I could really help them kind of achieve their goals of becoming a major player in the EB5 market, and ultimately providing a great product to investors that were interested, in the EB5 space. So yeah, it's been about over 2 years now, and I'm really enjoying it.
Hi, my name is Tara. I was born in China. I came to the US 20 years ago in 2001, and I joined the EB5AN 3 years ago in 2021. Prior to joining EB5AN, I was a regional center executive for 7 years. I have a background of service management. So I have a Master of Science degree in service leadership and innovation. And I really enjoy working with EB5 investors and our partners like lawyers and foreign promoters. I'm currently the Vice President of Investor Affairs and Global Partnerships at EB5AN. I joined the EB5AN by the introduction of a renowned EB5 immigration attorney in the industry. I really enjoy working in this company. I really like the company EB5AN is independent and very transparent. We also have lots of videos and lots of blog articles on our website to educate the EB5 investors. I really enjoy the team.
Hi, my name is Mark Ferriante. I'm originally from the California Bay Area. I'm actually a fourth generation Bay Area native. My great grandfather immigrated from Sicily in the early 1900s. Let's see, I'm a JD MBA. In terms of my background in EB5, I originally started at a small law firm in a law firm setting, and that was my first introduction to EB5. From there, I shifted to an EB5, a boutique EB5 consulting firm called Wright Johnson. And then that consulting firm got acquired by a big public accounting firm called Baker Tilly in 2017. And just as of a few months ago, I'm now on board with EB5AN. And the reason that I joined EB5AN is because I've had the chance to be in the industry and see how EB5AN operates for over the course of many years since I started in the EB5 industry in 2013. And just been able to see the dedication to transparency and to setting investors as a priority, to provide information that distilled a very complicated program into very simple terms, and that was easily digestible and easy to understand, that also minimized risks for investors in the way it's structured as projects, in the project selection process, that in the partners it aligned with, like culture. And so those are some of the reasons that I joined EB5AN, and just having a very, very talented team with diverse backgrounds who have long pedigrees in the EB5 space as well.
Hello, my name is Patrick Pavlik. I'm the Director of Asia Markets for EB5AN. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and then following graduation from my undergrad at Ohio University, I embarked on a journey that took me over to Asia, where I first worked in southern China, working in sourcing and import and export. Following that, I pursued an MBA in international business in Taiwan. And then after graduation, receiving my MBA, I started my journey in EB5, working for a major regional center. Following my time there, I did a lot of work in EB5 in Vietnam, where I then continued as the Director of Investments for a major migration agency based out of Vietnam, which gave me the opportunity to work with thousands of families and help them with their journeys, not only with EB5, but migration all over the world. And then during the pandemic, it brought me back to the United States, where I joined Driftwood Capital, where I did a hybrid role between private equity as well as managing the relations with partners in East Asia. I joined EB5AN because simply I was a big fan of the company. Throughout the years, I was always following the newsletter, receiving the daily emails, and someone that has a role of working directly with different partners and as well as investors. I just fell in love with their projects, and then once I got the opportunity to join the team, I jumped on board, and then that's what brought me here today.
All right, great. All right. Okay, so we'll shift discussion to kind of the second question. So starting with Jake, could you share some thoughts on the EB5 market today, and why is now a good time for investors considering making an EB5 investment?
There are a few key reasons why now is a good time for an EB5 investor to make an EB5 investment. One is definitely processing time. So with the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act that was passed in 2022, since then, we've seen processing times really drop for investors kind of across the board. And I-526E applications are being approved faster than I've ever seen in my 7 to 8 years of experience in the industry. Specifically in rural EB5 projects, many of our investors at EB5AN are receiving those I-526E approvals in 12 months or less, which is definitely better than pretty much any other time, I think, in EB5 history. Second, a good reason to invest now is visa availability. So particularly for investors born in China and India, right now there are set-aside visas available in rural, high unemployment, and infrastructure projects, and that really hasn't been the case since the early 2010s. So with visas available now, they're not going to be available forever, and so filing quickly and trying to grab one of those set-aside visas is definitely a good idea. Otherwise, the EB5 Regional Center program in general is the most stable that it's ever been. Back in the early 90s, when the Regional Center pilot program was put into place, it was just that, right? It was just a pilot program. Now in 2022, we have an actual law that was enacted by Congress. And so, many advantages come with that. EB5 investors are guaranteed adjudication under these rules through 2026. And there's no sunset coming in the next 6 to 12 months, which we've dealt with pretty much for the entire time the EB5 program has been in place, right? We have stability through 2027, which is really important for investors investing now. And a major key right now in EB5 is that since the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act was enacted, we have seen a flight to quality in EB5 projects across the board. So the industry has consolidated. Now there are fewer EB5 regional centers out there raising capital, but those EB5 regional centers are stronger and prioritizing safe deals.
I think there's two things, right? One, this is probably the best time to invest in EB5 because the RIA really created an environment where investors are coming first, right? Whereas a lot of how the program developed from the 90s into the early 2000s was dictated by regional centers, developers, big players in the market. The RIA really sought to put investors first and give them a lot more control. And I think the biggest part about that is transparency, right? So I think Jake touched on that a little bit, but really what you're seeing now is you have mandatory audits that are performed by USCIS every 5 years on regional centers. You have a lot faster project approvals, the 956Fs that are being submitted by projects prior to investors going into those projects now creates kind of a prerequisite, if you will, for investors to have that comfort level before investing in a project, that the immigration aspects of that project are also going to be approved. And it's really just down to their source of funds. You've got, mandatory third-party fund administration. So you've got, someone looking over the shoulder of the regional center, making sure that everything is in compliance and going correctly. We can't just take the money and, go buy a jet or something like that. So there's just so many more measures that are in place that have protected investors. So definitely the time is a big factor, right? It's happening faster than it ever did before. But the safety and just the level of transparency and the level of oversight that the government now has over the program, I think, is a really big advantage for investors. They come out as the big winners when everything is being done in accordance with these new rules. And then the second part of this that I would say is, sure, all that is fair and true, but why is right now the best time to invest? Well, the window is closing, right? Especially if you're an Indian national or a Chinese national, and possibly down the road, even some other nationals that more and more applications are rolling in, more and more people are using up these visas. There's a finite number of visas every year, and so and also the RIA ends in 2027, and so we don't know what that's going to look like past the 2027 date. So we're a few years into the RIA now. We've seen it work. We've seen a lot of the measures that have been taken by Congress actually enacted by USCIS. We've seen a lot of progress, but that window, again, it's closing in 2027. More changes are coming. We know for sure the amount will go up based on inflation and possibly even higher. So yeah, now is as good a time as any to get into that queue, secure their family's future, and really take advantage of all those protections and the projects that are on the market today.
I think it's a good time for many EB5 investors from China to make an EB5 investment right now, because in the China market, we know that there used to be a lot of EB5 investors from China, and the whole China market is very familiar with the term of a visa backlog. So right now, with the 20% reserved visa for the rural category and with the concurrent filing, so now EB5 is again a good solution for the Chinese families if they want to get an EB5 visa, the green card, within 2 to 3 years. So I think it's a perfect timing. Definitely do it for now.
Another thing that I'll touch on is the fact that we have, because of the collective institutional knowledge with people at EB5AN who have such long histories in EB5, our capability to assist investors has increased to navigate this maze of a federal bureaucracy, which is difficult. And so our ability has increased to assist investors. Also, investors are more informed and more sophisticated, which has had the result of higher expectations for quality projects with increased transparency, with a group like Coulter, who's already targeting developments in the southeastern region of the U.S. and in these rural qualified areas. They aren't trying to go out and find a rural area where to do a project so they can take in EB5 money. They are just developing like they normally do according to their business model and targeted these areas where the demand is. And then EB5 just happens to benefit from their rural qualified status, which, as we've mentioned, has the 20% reserve visa category and faster processing. So that alignment is ideal and optimal for investors at this time to safeguard their investments and also to fast track them through the immigration process.
What I'd like to add is, with the EB5 program since 2022, there's been major adjustments. The program's a lot more secure. It weeded out a lot of the bad apples and really focuses on investor security. It also provides a lot more opportunities. For instance, many investors that came here on H-1B or an EB2 and were kind of promised the route to getting a green card. For a lot of them, specifically like Indian nationals, the route to receiving permanent residency for them and their families essentially, about 10, 15, 20 years backlog. So again, we work with clients every single day that reach out to us that have been in the United States for 10 plus years. And then EB5 is providing them with a direct path to receiving a green card and alleviating their opportunities to rely on a sponsor for their work and providing their families with the advantages of permanent residency in the United States. One major advantage, with the program since the RIA passed in 2022 is a client's ability to adjust status. So them being in the United States, they can invest in the EB5 program and then within 4 to 6 months receive an EAD and as well as advanced parole documentation, providing them with work flexibility and travel flexibility while they're waiting for their I-526E petition to be approved. This is a major advantage, granting a lot more flexibility especially for clients that are stuck in backlog, such as H-1Bs that are looking to, pursue or that were promised essentially to receive their permanent residency. But due to backlog, they're currently in a long waiting line. But again, with EB5 and the ability to adjust status, this offers a lot more flexibility and relief to these tensions that these potential clients are seeing.
Jake, we'll circle back to you. So the question is, what makes EB5AN different from many other regional centers?
Sure. So I think one thing that really sets EB5AN apart from other regional centers in the EB5 industry is our team. So we have a large team of very experienced professionals who are EB5 industry veterans. We have lawyers, MBAs, people who have worked collectively with thousands and thousands of EB5 investors since the very beginning of the EB5 program. And that just allows us to provide a deep knowledge of the EB5 program and draw on years and years of experience across different variations of the regulations and the program itself, and just ensure successful outcomes on the immigration and the financial side. Another thing that really sets EB5AN apart is that we are definitely an industry leader in terms of educating the market. So we put an incredible amount of time, effort, and money into publishing blog posts, YouTube videos, and other educational content to make sure that any EB5 stakeholder is up to date and educated on any new developments in the program. And that just really helps our company reach a lot of different investors and developers in the country. And through our outreach and through our very large presence, we are in touch with a lot of potential EB5 projects. So we have developers and potential project sponsors reaching out to us all the time to get educated on EB5, to see if EB5 would potentially work for their projects. And as a result, we draw from an immense pool of potential projects when we go to select our deals. I think that's something that is just a huge advantage for EB5AN compared to other regional centers. It's just a sheer number of deals that we evaluate when we go to select our projects. So something else that really sets EB5AN apart is our institutional knowledge on the financial side, right? So any EB5 investor making one of these investments obviously is doing so primarily for the immigration benefit, but this is also a financial investment, right? And at the end of the day, you want to get your green card, but you also want to get your $800,000 back. So you want to work with a team that is experienced in selecting deals and investing in projects, right? And so our team is extremely experienced across the board. Our managing partners met at the Boston Consulting Group, which is one of the largest management consulting companies in the world. Mike was at AEA, a large private equity firm in New York. I came from Credit Agricole, one of the largest commercial and investment banks in the world. We have, Ahmed on our team, who is a former practicing immigration attorney at Fragaman, and many of our team members have worked at other regional centers evaluating potential investments as well. So when we structure our deals and we put together an offering, we're drawing from multiple different sets of experiences in very high caliber firms to structure the safest investment that we can.
Yep. So, having worked at other regional centers and having engaged with other regional centers over the years as an immigration attorney and seeing the various deals that, they have brought to market, I previously held my securities licenses as well, my Series 7 and my Series 63. What I've really seen that's different here at EB5AN is just a commitment to putting the investors first. I think, a lot of regional centers, what I'll see is they'll go out and try to find a place to park investors' money. They're not looking for necessarily the best and safest project. What they're looking for is the best way to go out and be able to raise capital. And to me, I think that's a very distinct difference. And you see it in the offerings when you compare them between EB5AN's offerings and other regional centers, right? You look at kind of, whether projects are under construction, whether they're forward facing, is this project going to be something that materializes several years down the road? Or is this a project working with a proven developer that's maybe already got a lot of equity, a lot of construction under their belt? And so investors can feel a lot more safe going into the deal. The level of due diligence, I've seen, a big difference. I think working internally, here versus working at another major regional center, I've learned a lot about what goes on, behind closed doors on the deal side. And I think that's something that's really different from a lot of other regional centers whose sales teams go out and have pitch decks and they're just kind of saying buzzwords, versus when you talk to some of us and we're really digging in on a very deep level, like Jake said, educating investors. Sure, we're educating the market in terms of, general EB5 requirements and timelines and things like that. But we're also educating investors on an individual level, explaining like, hey, this is why this deal is so great. This is why, you should be looking for this in any deal that you invest in, whether it's ours or somebody else's. So I just think that commitment to excellence and that commitment to investor safety and success is a big difference maker when it comes to not only finding those deals, but also ultimately, working with investors to make an informed decision about their EB5 investment.
I really like that EB5AN is very transparent. Before the EB5 investors make the investment, we offer them the whole set of offering documents for them to review. So when they are doing the due diligence, they can really read our documents and they can ask questions. I think that's very, very important for them to make an informed decision. And also, we are independent. So EB5AN and the developers, we are not affiliated entities. So that is great to avoid any conflict of interest. I think that is also very important because for EB5 investors, they need to know that the regional center, that our company EB5AN is completely on their side. We are an independent regional center, and we are also a very strong GP. So as a general partner, so we are essentially the fund managers. So down the road, in the next several years after they make the investment, we will be diligently looking at the project and do the project oversight, and all the way until they get their permanent green card and they get the capital back. We will be there with all the EB5 investors, and they should feel much safer when they are working with EB5AN as a very transparent and independent regional center operator.
Through my background in EB5 over the course of over a decade, and being at different consulting firms in a law firm setting, and most recently at Baker Tilly, I've helped or provide consulting to different regional centers and different industry stakeholders, and seen thousands of different projects and business plans. And there's a clear distinction between the level of quality and the validity of the analysis and the level of verification and the quality of the deal structures that EB5AN implements compared to the rest of the industry, which is something that sets themselves apart, and which is what attracted me to EB5AN as well. One thing I'll also touch on is the fact that a lot of times clients, because of the long processing times at USCIS, it was sort of became a standard practice to just file the application even though it was deficient and hope to cure at the RFE stage. That approach is rife with there are many risks associated with taking that approach, and it's not advisable. And the fact that EB5AN makes sure that everything is completely verified, there's no deficiencies, goes through a rigorous internal review before anything is ever filed. And for that reason, EB5AN, all of its projects in recent days all of the last 14 956 project applications have been approved without a single RFE. One thing I'd like to emphasize is that the way the industry operates is that oftentimes they will use third-party service providers to provide consulting and to provide documents like business plans or economic reports, which is what I did at Baker Tilly. And that can be problematic because there can be internal inconsistencies between the documents. At EB5AN, they have the expertise, the know-how to develop their own documentation and to do it in such a way that the level of quality is much higher. And for that reason, they have a very strong reputation and an excellent track record with USCIS, and most often will receive approval without any questions from the Immigration Service, without issuing a single RFE.
EB5AN, what they do to differentiate themselves from other regional centers, which I have experience working for a few, and EB5AN is essentially committed to long-term success for their investors. So, knowing about EB5AN, they take a full focused approach for their investors, carefully structuring investments that are aligned with their preferences and reduce risks, whether this be immigration, reducing risk regarding immigration, or reducing risk regarding their investment. And then most importantly, EB5AN, what makes them much different is we are fully transparent throughout our entire process, including our projects. So we provide our clients with regular updates, on project progress. Clients have the ability to go visit the sites. We can even share the financial performance for our projects. We're an open book. And then we do this to, educate investors and allow them to make, educated decisions on their EB5 process. And as well, as already mentioned on, the EB5AN team is filled with highly skilled experts, whether it be in finance, immigration, EB5 specific. as well as our managing partners, always make themselves available. Upon request, an investor has the opportunity to speak directly with one of the two of the co-founders of EB5AN, either it be Sam or Mike. They always make themselves available. In my past, when I worked for other, regional centers, this was essentially impossible. It was almost impossible, even if requests to, speak with one of the principals of the company, and as well as, helping them to, guide them through very specific questions, whether it be the financial, performance or, forecasts of the project. This was always a little bit hard to, open up and disclose. But at EB5AN, whether it's meeting with a managing partner or, seeing the financials or getting very specific on, the projects that they're interested in, that's something that EB5AN does exceptionally well and makes them very different than other regional centers.
On the project side, transparency is key for any investor to be able to evaluate what the regional center is telling them, right? Every EB5 regional center has an offering. Every offering has a private placement memorandum, a business plan, right? But where the transparency comes in is when an investor goes to evaluate those documents, right? You read the PPM, but you want to know what exactly is that PPM telling you. PPM tells you there's a repayment guarantee maybe. Okay, well, how valuable is that repayment guarantee? You got to dig one level deeper and look at the entity maybe that's actually backing it. And you're going to want to see financial statements of that entity, right? Maybe the PPM is telling you that your investment's secured by a mortgage. Okay, what exactly is that mortgage on, right? What land is being provided as collateral, and how much is that land worth? You want to dig again down and see those documents. Maybe there's a pledge, right, of the project as a whole. Well, what's the project worth? And if you're seeing an estimate of value, how did you get to that number? What assumptions are you making, right? And so to answer all those questions, you're going to need transparency from the regional center that you're working with. And EB5AN really makes an effort to provide all of that information to every EB5 investor across all of our deals. But generally, something else to consider is transparency when you go to engage your immigration attorney, okay? So it's key to ensure that your immigration attorney is not related to the regional center, and as an investor that you're free to engage any immigration attorney you want. You might get a recommendation for an attorney from different stakeholders, but you want to ensure that ultimately you're free to engage any attorney that you select. And that's because at the end of the day, your immigration attorney is representing you with respect to your application, and you want to ensure that they're completely independent from anyone else involved in the process.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at any project or really any kind of transaction in your life, having a conflict of interest is a huge problem. That's why that term exists. That's why, you have to be disclosed. They have to be disclosed. That's why everyone warns you against it. And EB5 is really no different, right? So there's two main conflicts of interest that we see kind of in the industry, and both of them you should probably try to avoid. The big one, and we've seen this play out in a pretty spectacular fashion in the past, is if the developer of the project and the regional center are both one entity, then the fiduciary duty that the regional center holds is now conflicted with the interest that the developer has for themselves. And so if you're working with a developer who's also now the regional center, it's really tough to imagine a world where the project goes south and the developer then sues themselves to get you your money back as an investor. So that's a pretty clear conflict of interest, and one that's easily avoidable by just working with a regional center that is completely independent from the developer of the project that you may or may not be investing into, right? So that one's pretty clear cut. I think it's black and white. I don't really think there's much to even discuss there. If you want to take on that risk because maybe there's a financial incentive being offered to you, or there's some other kind of spin to that story, you can absolutely do that, but you have to understand that you're taking a big risk where if things go well, great, everyone's happy. But when you're assessing risk, you have to assume that things are going to go south or things are going to go bad. And if things go bad, who's in your corner? Not the person you just gave $800,000 to, right? So that's always something to consider, and one that I would personally say you should always avoid. On the same side, when you're choosing an immigration attorney, you really want to work with an attorney that's going to look after your best interests, right? So an attorney that is tied to a regional center, maybe it's financially tied in the sense that they're doing a lot of the work for them, or there's some other, kind of inconsistency in this. A true regional center should not care which immigration attorney you work with, so long as that immigration attorney can provide good EB5 counsel, right? Good source of funds, good immigration counsel. And there are a number of firms that do that in the industry today. So for a regional center to say, hey, you can't work with any of those firms, you only have to work with this one, that should be an alarm bell going off. That's a huge red flag in my mind, because why? Why would that representation matter so much that they would just completely, ignore all of the other years of experience that the other attorneys have? So you want to have someone that's representing just your interests, and to avoid really any kind of backdoor dealings or any kind of backdoor kind of relationships, you should find an attorney that is independent, that has no affiliation with the regional center, other than, in a professional manner, in the sense that they maybe, from time to time represent clients that have invested in that regional center. And even if, a regional center passes off work to attorneys, even we do that from time to time at EB5AN, that's okay, but we keep that list rotating. We always send work to different attorneys to maintain that level of independence and make sure that we're not basically affiliating ourselves with one immigration attorney specifically.
I think it's important that each EB5 investor knows that they are essentially putting together a team that are working for them during the whole EB5 investment process. The goal is to get them the green card and also have the safe return of their funds. So they are in the center as a EB5 investor. They are going to choose a good, solid regional center with a good project that they can invest into. And they also need an attorney that would advise them and help them put together the petitions to get the approval for the EB5 green card. So for them, they should be very careful choosing the professionals that they are going to work with.
Finding a project and the parties involved that are truly independent is critical because of the conflict of interest that do arise. I've seen projects where the attorney has ownership in the regional center that's providing affiliation, and that also is providing the consulting services and the documentation and even a market study. It's very difficult to say that attorney can truly be independent when it has so many conflicting interests. So it's the way EB5AN is structured is to maintain independence and to provide that security for investors. One thing that I'll also point out is the conflict that can arise because of the lack of visibility. And one thing that EB5AN did recently was partner with Customers Bank to analyze escrow data, because FOIA data, by the time it's received, it's almost obsolete. And also it gives an inaccurate picture of what's really happening. So to avoid these conflicts of lack of visa availability in the past that created backlogs, EB5AN has been very innovative in pursuing different channels where we can gain additional insights and visibility that the industry didn't have previously. So I think that's of vital importance to maintain that visibility on behalf of investors, to look after their best interests.
So yeah, I'm going to repeat a lot of things that my colleagues have said, but essentially, transparency in avoiding conflicts of interest is crucial, for EB5 investors, especially when it comes to attorneys and project managers. It ensures that everyone shares the same goal, and and that goal is to succeed. When attorneys and project managers, and the regional center kind of have a conflict of interest and are all working aligned, if something were to go awry, the investor could be the one at the end that is taking the fall for everything. We've seen this in the past, and this has been a major issue and has really affected investors' kind of confidence in the EB5 program. Fortunately, with EB5AN, they have a seamless track record. This hasn't been the case for them because EB5AN has avoided these conflicts of interest, ensuring that the regional center of the project and the attorneys are all working in the best interest for the investor and being fully transparent to help the investor make an informed decision in doing what's best for them to meet their ultimate goal of, getting repayment of their investment as well as getting their green card.
Last question we'll cover is just what's the number one thing that you would want to emphasize to a potential investor considering EB5 today? Like, what's just in your mind, what's that one just key thing? All right, you're thinking about EB5, like, maybe it's two things. Let's say two things that you would just say, these are the two things that you should, focus on. And if you do those, like, you're going to be starting from a good position for success. Go ahead, Jake.
One key thing to think about when making an EB5 investment is to select an EB5 project that has an I-956F project approval and has either already created all EB5 jobs or has a clear path to creating those jobs. So nobody would make an EB5 investment in any of these projects if they weren't going to get the immigration benefit, right? That's really the only reason that we're even talking about this. And so to ensure that immigration success, the government basically can look at a project and pre-approve it. And you can reduce your own immigration risk and insulate it to only your personal details and your source of funds by selecting a project that already has that approval. To remove your conditions on your green card, you're going to need to demonstrate that your investment created 10 jobs. And so you want to be in a project that has either already met that requirement or will soon do so in the future. So I think that's the number one consideration when looking at projects. Number two would be the track record of the regional center that you're investing with. Take a look at the regional center. How long have they been in the EB5 industry? How many projects have they done? And have they had any failed projects? Of course, here at EB5AN, we've been in the industry for over a decade, never had a single project fail, never lost a single dollar of investor capital, and never had any of our EB5 investors denied for a project purpose. So those are the two main things I would focus on if I were an investor in EB5 today.
Really, it's a two-part statement, but it's kind of going after the same thing. One is, do your homework, and two is ignore the fluff. So I think a lot of EB5 investors are not sophisticated investment professionals. They don't have a history of doing due diligence on these types of investments. They're kind of coming in blind and learning on the way. So the first thing that I would say is, do your homework, do a lot of research, whether that's independent research online that you're kind of getting from completely unrelated sources than EB5, you're maybe reading up on Investopedia and learning what different terms means, or you're watching videos on Khan Academy just to learn, basic investment ideals. I think that's a really good way to get started. And then when you speak with with EB5 regional center representatives, you're asking better questions, right? You're asking the questions that matter, and you're digging deep into those documents, and you're looking for very specific things. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think a lot of investors get, they feel it's an over daunting task to go in and dig through all the PPMs and ask a lot of questions, but that's literally the point. You have to do that to make sure that you're making a good investment decision, especially when there's this much money and your family's future, probably just as important, at stake. And the second thing is, the fluff, right? Ignore buzzwords, ignore just commonly created myths that people will try to peddle you. Really dig behind that, what those terms are. So if someone says, oh yeah, all that matters is that you're sitting at a senior loan level, don't just fall for that and say, oh yeah, it says senior loan, I'm just going to buy that. Ask, what does it really mean to be a senior loan? Ask if, are you senior loan the day that your money goes in, or are you replacing another senior loan, and one day in the future, far into the future possibly, will you be the senior loan? What does a senior loan really mean? If a senior loan is for $300 million and the underlying collateral is only worth $50 million in the best case scenario, unless the project is completely successful, it doesn't matter if you're senior. You've now covered both the senior tranche and the mezzanine tranche, and the underwriting isn't going to be any safer. So it's really important to understand what these buzzwords that marketing that people will market to you what they really mean. Understanding what they mean, knowledge is the only defense that you really have. Knowledge is power when it comes to making these decisions, and educating yourself and really digging deep and having the regional center explain these things to you and show you through documentation that these things are actually verified is the only way that you can protect yourself and your family.
Okay, Tara, for Chinese investors that you are talking with today, what are the two things that you just really want to make sure they understand after that, first call with you?
Number one, I think they should do the due diligence and choose the right product. So for the project they choose, they need to do the homework and really choose a project that has a low immigration risk and low financial risk. So that's number one, choose the right product. And number two, choose their team. So basically, they need to choose a regional center that they are going to work with that is transparent and that is independent, and always be available to them before and after they make the EB5 investment. So for the whole EB5 process, they would have the right project and they would be working with the right team. Then that would ensure their success getting the EB5 green card.
One thing that I will add is to consider different options and to look at evaluate different project choices and different, risk profiles or investment terms to make sure that it's a good fit. I would also say, to understand the different parties involved, their experience, their reputation, to make sure that the documentation was adequately prepared in terms of qualifying expenditures and job creation analysis, in the economic analysis. Also, one really critical thing I think is it a project that's offering a completion guarantee, a job creation guarantee, also an EB5 approval guarantee, and a developer guarantee? Can they truly vouch for the project and to minimize the risk?
I believe the two things that investors should focus on, I want to add, I agree with all my colleagues here and what they've said, but to add on this, one thing specifically I want investors to, kind of know is don't get kind of confused or persuaded by, the individual numbers. Know the facts. First and foremost, do your research on all the projects. Don't get swayed by, a good deal in this sense or a good deal in that, or this project is offering, a great return and they say that I'm going to for sure get my money back. Well, look really into that. How are you going to get your money back? Repayment guarantee. Is this just a corporate guarantee or is it tied to something actually that will ensure your repayment? That's number one, is obviously don't get swayed by numbers and look deep into the project. And number two is obviously, the regional center and project company's track record. Has this developer, this project company, do they have a track record of kind of investing in projects and then running away? If they do, probably, but you have to do your research into understanding this. And then as well as the regional center, do they have a track record of maybe, selecting projects and offering these to clients that are at high risk or, have had issues in the past? So, really do your research on the project company as well as the developer, and then don't get swayed by, fancy numbers that are thrown at you.
So yeah, one of the major advantages since the RIA and why, right now is a really great time to invest is concurrent filing. Especially if you're from a country that is traditionally backlogged, this is a huge advantage. It gives you an opportunity to not only file your EB5 application and get into that queue, but filing your adjustment of status has really clear advantages in the short term as well. You do get an EAD and an advanced parole, an employment authorization document, and an advanced parole. And these documents will basically let you work and travel, essentially the same benefits that a green card gives you within just a few months. So you end up in a situation where you're getting a lot of the benefits that a green card will give you, but very, very early on in the process. The other big advantage of concurrent filing in a lot of situations is and if you're in the US, you can do a concurrent filing, is you can lock in your child's age. So in a lot of instances, you will lock in your child's age for pretty much forever if you're able to file an adjustment of status at the same time as your EB5 application. So these are two really big advantages that EB5 investors today have that they didn't have in the past. And remember, when a country backlogs on the visa bulletin, you're no longer able to file an adjustment of status concurrently. So again, that window is closing. It's a really good time to take advantage of the rules as they currently are and get your application into the queue and really avail yourself of the advantages of concurrent filing.